Hello everyone, this is Lakshman. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video, I am going to talk about the top most frequently asked Spring Boot interview questions and answers. If you are preparing for your next Java interview and in the job description they mentioned the skills like Spring Framework, then you should also prepare some Spring Boot entry questions to clear your technical round. The Spring Boot is now the standard way to use Spring Framework for Java development, and almost all the companies are moving from the traditional way of using Spring Framework to more modern Spring Boot way. So nowadays, interview expect more knowledge of Spring Boot from candidates. The Spring Boot aims to simplify Java development with Spring by removing major pain points with respect to configuration, dependency management, and ease of development. In order to answer Spring Boot question with confidence, you not only know what problem Spring Boot solves, but also in-depth knowledge of some core features like auto configuration and starter dependencies. So these two features eliminate a lot of configuration and setup work from Spring based Java application. So without wasting our time, so here is the list of the top most Spring Boot interview questions for experienced candidates. The first question is, what is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is a framework for a rapid application development built on top of the Spring framework. We can say in simple words, Spring Boot is a combination of Spring framework and embedded servers. It is used to create a standalone Spring based application that you can just run because it needs minimal Spring configuration. In Spring Boot, there is no requirement for XML configuration. That means it decreases the effort of the developer. The next question is, why Spring Boot is used? To design any Spring based application, a developer needs to take care a manual setup on Hibernate data source, entity manager, session factory, transaction management, everything. So to design all those common setup, a developer does not need to define everything individually. Spring Boot configuration annotation enough to manage everything at the time of deployment. So Spring MVC application, some of the XML configuration mandatory to manage, whereas configuring Spring Boot application, nothing needs to be managed. So the only annotation manages everything. So that is the reason Spring Boot came into the picture. The next question is, what is the use of Spring Boot application annotation and how it works internally? The Spring Boot application annotation is equivalent to using configuration annotation, enable auto configuration annotation, and component scan annotation with their default attributes. So Spring Boot enables the developer to use a single annotation instead of using multiple. But as we know, Spring provided loosely coupled features that we can use for each individual annotation as per our project needs. The next entry question is, what are the starter dependencies? Spring Boot starters are Maven templates that contain a collection of all the relevant transitive dependencies that are need to start a particular functionality. For example, if you want to create a Spring Web MVC application, then the traditional setup we would have included all the required dependencies ourselves. So it leaves the chance of version conflict, which ultimately result in more runtime exceptions. With Spring Boot, to create a Web MVC application, all we need to import Spring Boot Starter Web dependency. It brings all in other required dependencies to build a web application. For example, Spring WebMC, Spring Web, Hibernate Validator, Tomcat Embed Core, Tomcat Embed EL, Tomcat Embed WebSocket. Okay, and you can see here pom.xml. In the pom.xml, in the dependency, you have to add this Spring Boot Starter Web. Okay, the next question is, what is Spring Initializer and why should we use it? So one of the difficult thing to start with a Spring framework is initial setup, particularly if you are starting from scratch and you don't have a reference setup or project. Spring Initializer addresses this problem in the Spring Boot. It's nothing but a web application which helps you to create initial Spring Boot project structure and provides Maven or Gradle build file to build your code. The next question is, what is Spring Activator and what are its advantages? This is a very interesting Spring Boot question and mostly asked on Java roles, which also has some support responsibility. Spring Activator is another cool Spring Boot feature which allows seeing inside a running application. It allows you to see inside an application. Since Spring Boot is all about auto configuration, it makes debugging difficult, and at some point in time you want to know which beans are created in Spring's application context and how controls are mapped. So Spring Activator provides all that information, and it provides several endpoints, for example REST endpoint to retrieve this kind of information over the web. And it also provides a lot of insight and matrices about application health, for example CPU and memory usage and number of threads, etc. And it also comes with a remote shell which you can use to securely go inside Spring Boot application and run some command to expose the same set of data. So you can even use JMX to control this behavior at runtime. So it's important to secure your Spring Activator endpoints because it exposes a lot of confidential information and a potentially dangerous one too. For example, by using /shutdown endpoint, you can kill a Spring Boot application. The next question is, what is Spring Boot CLI and what are its benefits? Spring Boot CLI is a command line interface which allows you to create Spring based Java application using Groovy. Since it's used Groovy, it allows you to create Spring Boot application from the command line without Criminy. For example, you don't need to define getter and setter method or access modifiers, so return statements, etc. Okay. Next question is, what are some common Spring Boot annotations? Some of the most common Spring Boot annotations are enable auto configuration, Spring Boot application, Spring Boot configuration, Spring Boot test. The enable auto configuration is used to enable auto configuration on Spring Boot application, while Spring Boot application annotation is used on the main class to allow it to run a jar file, and Spring Boot test annotation is used to run unit test on the Spring Boot environment. The next question is, what is difference between Spring Boot application and enable auto configuration annotation? Even though both are essential Spring Boot application and used in the main class or bootstrap class, there is a subtle difference between them. The enable configuration is used to enable auto configuration, but Spring Boot application annotation does a lot more than that. It also combines @configuration and comment scan annotations to enable Java based configuration and component scanning in your project, whereas the Spring Boot application is in fact a combination of configuration, component scan and enable auto configuration annotations. Okay, I hope you understand. Okay, the next question is, can we disable the default web server in the Spring Boot application? So the major strong point in Spring is to provide flexibility to build your application loosely coupled. So Spring provides features to disable the web server in a quick configuration. So yes, we can use the application.properties to configure the web application type, that is spring.main.web application type equal to none. So if you can do that, we can disable the default web server in the Spring Boot application. The next question is, can we override or replace the embedded Tomcat server in Spring Boot? Yes, we can replace that embedded Tomcat with any other servers by using starter dependencies. So you can use like this: Spring Boot starter jetty or Spring Boot starter _2 as a dependency for each project as you need. The next question is, how to do unit testing and integration testing in Spring Boot application. So you know very well, any software application is divided into different modules and components. When one such component is tested in isolation, it is called unit testing. So unit tests do not verify whether the application code works with external dependencies correctly. It focuses on single component and mocks all dependencies this component interacts with. So to perform unit testing, we can take the help of some specific annotations such as @JDBC test. This can be used for a typical JDBC test when a test focuses on only JDBC based components. The next one, JSON test. It is used when a test focuses on JSON serialization. The next one, REST client test. It is used to test REST clients. Next one, web MVC test. It is used for Spring MVC test with configuration relevant to only MVC test. So when it comes to integration testing, we shall focus on testing complete request processing from controller to persistence layer. So there are different types of annotations available for integration testing, that is Spring Boot test annotation. It helps in writing integration tests. It starts the embedded server and fully initializes the application context. You can inject the dependencies in test class using auto void annotation. We can also provide test specific beans configuration using nested configuration class or explicit test configuration annotation classes. The next question is, how to enable debug logging. To enable debug logging, we can start the application with the -debug switch like this, okay, and we can set the logging.level.root equal to debug property in application.properties file, and we can set the logging level of root logger in supplied logging configuration file. The next question is, how to enable HTTP or SSL support in Spring Boot. The SSL support in Spring Boot project can be added via application.properties file and by adding the below entries in the properties file. Like you have to add like this properties file, server.port equal to, so any port number, okay. So we have to add like this, key value pairs, password, store, and everything. The next question is it possible to change the port of embedded Tomcat server in Spring Boot? Yes, it is possible to change the port. You can use the application.properties file to change the port, but you need to mention server.port, that is server.port equal to whatever the port number, 8081. So make sure you have application.properties in your project class path. REST Spring Framework will take care of the rest. If you mention server.port equal to 0, then it will automatically assign any available port, okay. The next question is, where do you define properties in Spring Boot application? You can define both application and Spring Boot related properties into a file called application.properties file. You can create this file manually, or you can use Spring Initializer to create this file. You don't need to do any special configuration to instruct Spring Boot load this file. If it exists in class path, then Spring Boot automatically loads it and configure itself, and application code accordingly. So that's all about some of the top most asked Spring Boot interview questions for experienced candidates as well as who are starting their learning the Spring Boot career. Okay, so I hope you enjoy my video. So if you really like this video, please hit the like button and also give comments about this video. So I hope you enjoy my video. So thank you for watching.